Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled we get to dive into today's topic together. We're going to take this really fascinating chronological look at how one of history's most famous moral rules evolved over time. By digging into these ancient historical and religious texts, we'll see how a super simple four-word directive morphed over centuries into this profound, deeply challenging mandate about human nature itself. Let's get right into it. But hey, before we travel back thousands of years, let's talk about right now. Have you ever, swiped a pen from the office or maybe streamed a movie online for free just because you figured nobody would ever notice? It's a question that drops us right into a totally relatable modern-day moral dilemma. We usually picture major rules in terms of grand heists or dramatic crimes, right? But honestly, so much of our actual behavior happens in those quiet, unseen margins. So just keep your own minor infractions in the back of your mind as we unpack these ancient texts today. Section 1, the original commandment, the baseline rule. Okay, let's dive into this. To grasp just how complex this whole issue becomes, you kind of have to think of this first text as the very tip of the iceberg. It's the absolute simplest, most fundamental baseline you can get. Exodus 20, verse 15. You shall not steal. Wow, right? There's just this stark, powerful simplicity to that rule. In the ancient world, this served as a strict, highly visible boundary for behavior. It was entirely an external, legal, and social framework built to keep a community running smoothly. But, as we all know, humans are endlessly creative, especially when it comes to bending the rules. Moving right along to Section 2, plunder, profit, and oppression, finding loopholes. So, now we're diving beneath the surface to see how, historically speaking, humanity almost immediately found workarounds for that original mandate. They didn't just break the rule, they organized it, legalized it, and basically escalated rule-breaking into an art form. The ancient texts in Proverbs capture this evolution perfectly. Stealing quickly morphed from this simple individual act into a calculated, organized greed. The text actually talks about people inviting others to cast lots and share the loot, which is basically forming ancient gangs. But what's really striking here is the warning that becoming greedy for unjust gain literally takes away the life of its possessors. The writers realize that this kind of systemic theft doesn't just hurt the victim, it fundamentally hollows out and destroys the person committing the crime. And the scale of this greed, it just kept growing. Check out this unexpectedly bizarre and vivid metaphor from Isaiah chapter 10. The text describes conquering kings totally boasting about their conquests. They brag about removing boundaries and plundering treasures, literally saying they scooped up the wealth of the earth as easily as someone gathering forsaken eggs from a nest, where no one even moved a wing or opened the mouth or chirped. It is such a chilling image. It shows exactly how stealing escalated into this arrogant, systemic plunder, where powerful nations casually scooped up the wealth of the vulnerable without a single second thought. Now, what's really interesting about this next text is the severe contrast the prophet Jeremiah paints between expectation and reality. He outlines this beautiful divine ideal for a leader, someone who actually judges the cause of the poor and needy. But the historical reality? Yeah, he calls out leaders who only have eyes and hearts for dishonest gain, which directly leads to shedding innocent blood and practicing violent oppression. That simple baseline rule of don't steal had basically been completely swallowed up by institutionalized corruption. Which brings us to Section 3, a matter of the heart, the internal shift. Because of this catastrophic failure by humanity to just follow a simple behavioral boundary, we see a massive pivot in the texts. The historical critique shifts entirely inward to the human condition. In the first century, Jesus completely flips the script. In the book of Mark, chapter 7, he relocates the origin of theft entirely. He argues that it's not just an external physical action anymore. It's an internal, hidden condition of the human heart. By listing theft right alongside murder and immorality as things that come from within, he is diagnosing the absolute root cause here. You don't become a thief the exact moment your hand grabs an object. You become a thief the moment your heart covets it. Let's move over to the book of Matthew and see how this builds. Because Jesus doesn't just diagnose the problem, he visually compounds a radical new standard. He tells his listeners not to resist an evil person. If you're sued for your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If an occupying soldier forces you to walk 1 mile, go ahead and walk 2. He completely replaces that rigid don't take from me rule with a totally countercultural posture of extreme vulnerability and aggressive generosity. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate paradigm shift. Matthew 5:42 says, "Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you." This verse fundamentally redefines the entire original commandment. It is no longer enough to just simply not steal. Mere behavioral compliance, that's the old way. Radical, open-handed generosity is the new requirement. Let's bring this to the present in Section 4, the modern thief, daily habits. So what does this all mean for us? How does this ancient philosophical shift actually apply to us today? We really need to connect these ancient mandates directly to our daily lives. The text in Ephesians chapter 4 elegantly bridges the gap between the ancient rule and modern responsibility. It demands that anyone who's been stealing has to stop, naturally, but it doesn't end there. It says you must work, doing something useful, specifically, so that you may have something to share with those in need. You see, you aren't working just to hoard wealth for yourself. You're working so that you can become a conduit for that radical generosity Jesus was talking about. Which brings us to a direct, really piercing challenge from Romans chapter 2. You who preach against stealing, do you steal? Ouch. It is incredibly easy for us to just sit back and judge those ancient conquering kings or those organized gangs, but this text forces us to hold up a mirror and honestly reflect on our own, everyday, hidden infractions. Because let's face it, these seemingly minor offenses stack up so quickly in our daily routines. Cutting corners at your job, wasting company time while you're technically on the clock, pirating digital content just because it's super easy and anonymous, letting greed completely dictate your interactions, looking the other way and refusing to give to those in need, or maybe fiercely hoarding your money out of a deep lack of trust in the world. According to the evolution of the text we've been unpacking today, these aren't just harmless little habits. They are absolutely distinct forms of dishonest gain. They're the modern loopholes we use to justify our own personal plunder. And that leads us to our final point, Section 5, an open invitation, community of healing. So the crucial point is this: if we're being completely honest, viewing the rule through this expanded internal lens means that humanity is still constantly failing to keep it. We are all in some way falling way short of that standard of radical generosity. But here's the massive twist. The source texts we've explored do not end with a locked door. If you find yourself cutting corners, wasting time, pirating content, hoarding wealth, or just capitalizing on dishonest gains, the overarching narrative of these texts issues a radical invitation to enter into a community of healing anyway. Yep, despite all our systemic greed, all our flaws, and our internal hoarding, the text offers this welcoming invitation rather than final condemnation. It acknowledges the brokenness of the human heart, and it just invites us in to be repaired. We have seen how a simple rule carved on a stone tablet basically became a profound mirror reflecting our deepest internal struggles. So I want to leave you with this. If the ultimate rule isn't just about policing our external behavior, but actually healing the selfish condition of the human heart, how will you answer this invitation today? Take some time to really ponder what you're fiercely holding on to and how you might be able to open your hands just a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this sparks a deeper curiosity in you to explore these incredible texts even further.